The world was vast. It was harsh. The wind howled across the endless plains. These were the lands of the Oghuz Turks. They were nomads, wanderers. Their home was the saddle. Their wealth was their herds. Sheep, goats, and horses followed them. They moved with the seasons, seeking fresh pasture. Life was a constant struggle for survival. Nature was a cruel master, but also a provider. They knew its secrets, its rhythms. This was their ancient way. The Kinnic tribe was one among many. They were fierce, they were proud. Seljuk was their chieftain, a man of vision, or perhaps a man driven by necessity. The old ways were becoming harder. Other tribes pressed in. Resources grew thin. Seljuk saw the horizon. He saw a future beyond the familiar steppe. He knew his people were strong. They were riders, they were archers. They were warriors born to the harshness of the land, their spirits untamed. Their society was simple, yet bound by complex loyalties. The clan was everything. Blood ties meant survival. A slight against one was a slight against all. They revered the sky god, Tengri. They looked to shamans for guidance. The spirits of their ancestors watched over them, or so they believed. Their laws were unwritten, carried in memory and tradition. Justice was swift, often brutal. This world forged them into hardened people, but the steppe was not isolated. Trade routes crossed it like veins. Merchants brought goods and stories. They spoke of settled lands. They spoke of cities, of wealth beyond imagining. They spoke of different gods, different powers. Seeds of change were carried on the wind. The Seljuks listened. They were restless. The old ways offered familiarity, but the world was whispering of something new, something far greater. The call of destiny was faint, but it was there. The whispers grew louder. They came from the south. They spoke of Allah, the one true God. Missionaries and traders carried this new faith, Islam. It was a religion of order, of community. It offered a path, a purpose. Seljuk, the old chieftain, was intrigued. He saw something in this new belief. Perhaps it was a way to unite his people. Perhaps it was a way to give them an edge. The reasons are lost to the dust of time. Around the year 985, a momentous decision was made. Seljuk led his tribe, his people, into Islam. They declared their faith, Shahada. There is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is his messenger. This was not just a spiritual change. It was a political earthquake. It aligned them with powerful Islamic states. It opened doors. It also created enemies. Some Oghuz remained pagan. The old ways died hard. But the Seljuks had crossed a threshold. This new faith ignited a fire in their souls. They were no longer just nomads, they were Ghazi, warriors for the faith. This gave them a powerful motivation. It justified conquest. It promised reward in this life and the next. The concept of jihad resonated with their warrior culture. Their already formidable fighting skills were now imbued with divine purpose. They were on a mission from God, or so they told themselves. This belief would carry them far. The conversion was not merely a surface change. It began to reshape their identity. They learned Arabic script. They studied Islamic law. They integrated into the wider Islamic civilization, yet they retained their Turkic traditions, their language, their nomadic spirit. This blend would define them. They were a new force, a Turkic force, marching under the banner of Islam. The world was about to feel their impact. The steppe warriors were coming. With their new faith came new ambitions and new pressures. The Seljuks, under leaders like Arslan Israel, son of Seljuk, began to move. They were pushed by drought, they were pulled by opportunity. The lands of Transoxiana beckoned. These were settled lands, richer lands, but they were not empty. The Ghaznavids, another Turkic dynasty, ruled there. The Karakhanids, also Turkic, were their rivals. It was a complex web of power. The early migrations were fraught with conflict. The Seljuks were skilled raiders. Their cavalry was swift, deadly. They harassed the frontiers of established empires. They fought as mercenaries. They fought for themselves. Sometimes they won, sometimes they lost. They learned, they adapted, they grew stronger. They were a thorn in the side of the great powers, a persistent growing threat. The Ghaznavids underestimated them. This was a fatal mistake. Their numbers swelled. Other Oghuz Turkic groups joined them. They were a tide, a relentless wave of people. They sought land, they sought plunder, they sought a place to call their own. The established order began to tremble. Local populations feared them. Rulers tried to control them, to use them. But the Seljuks had their own agenda. They were not content to be pawns in someone else's game. They were becoming players. These early conflicts forged their military machine. They learned to fight larger, more organized armies. They perfected their hit-and-run tactics. The composite bow was their signature weapon. Fired from horseback, it was devastating. They learned siegecraft, though slowly. They were still nomads at heart, but they were learning the ways of empire. The taste of victory was sweet. The hunger for more grew with every success. The tide was rising, and it was unstoppable. Two brothers rose to lead the Seljuks, Tugril Beg and Chagri Beg, grandsons of Seljuk. Tugril was the political mind. Chagri was the military commander. Together they were a formidable force. They saw the weakness in their enemies. The Ghaznavid Empire was vast, but stretched thin. It was ripe for the taking. The Seljuks were united, hungry. They had a destiny to fulfill. Or so Tugril believed. The decisive moment came at the Battle of Dandanakan in 1040. It was a brutal fight. The Seljuks were outnumbered, but they were more mobile, more determined. They shattered the Ghaznavid army. The Ghaznavid Sultan Masud fled the field. His empire crumbled. Persia lay open before the Seljuks. It was a stunning victory. From nomadic warriors, they became masters of a kingdom. Tugril Beg was the architect of this new reality. Tugril did not stop there. He was relentless. He marched west. He entered Nishapur, then Ray, then Isfahan. Great cities of Persia fell to his forces. He was a conqueror, but he was also a statesman. He sought legitimacy. In 1055, he entered Baghdad, the heart of the Abbasid Caliphate. The Caliph was a spiritual leader, but politically weak. Tugril presented himself as the Caliph's protector. The Caliph, in turn, recognized Tugril as Sultan, king of the East and West. This was a masterstroke. It gave Tugril immense prestige. It legitimized his rule in the eyes of the Islamic world. He was no longer a tribal chieftain. He was a sultan, anointed by the Caliph. He began to build an administration. He appointed viziers. He tried to bring order to his new domains. The transition from nomadic life to imperial rule was difficult. There were rebellions. There were internal rivalries. But Tugril held it together. He laid the foundation. An empire was forged. Section 5, Alp Arslan, the lion roars, Manzikert looms. Tugril Beg died without a son. His nephew, Alp Arslan, inherited the throne. His name meant heroic lion. He lived up to it. Alp Arslan was a warrior. He was brave. He was ambitious. He had a powerful vizier, Nizam al-Mulk. Nizam was a brilliant administrator. He brought order to the vast Seljuk lands. Together, Alp Arslan and Nizam al-Mulk consolidated the empire. They expanded its borders. The lion was ready to hunt. The main threat now came from the west. The Byzantine Empire, Anatolia, modern-day Turkey, was Byzantine land. It was rich, it was fertile, it was strategically vital. Turkic raiders, Ghazi warriors, had been probing its frontiers for years. They sought plunder, they sought land. Alp Arslan saw a greater opportunity. He wanted to secure his western flank. He wanted to weaken the Byzantines. Perhaps he dreamed of more. The Byzantines were not idle. Emperor Romanos IV Diogenes saw the growing Seljuk threat. He gathered a massive army. He aimed to crush the Seljuks once and for all. He wanted to drive them back into the deserts. It was a clash of titans brewing. Two empires on a collision course, two faiths, two worlds. The fate of Anatolia hung in the balance. The year was 1071. The stage was set for a battle that would change history. Alp Arslan marched east, then north, towards Armenia and Georgia. He was campaigning there when he heard of Romanos's advance. He had to react quickly. His army was smaller than the Byzantine force, but his men were seasoned warriors. They were loyal. They were fighting for their faith, their homes, their sultan. Alp Arslan turned his forces. He headed for a place called Manzikert. Destiny awaited him there. The lion was about to roar. Section 6. The Earth Shakes. The Battle of Manzikert. August 26, 1071. The plains near Manzikert. Two armies faced each other. The Byzantines were a diverse force. Greeks, Normans, Franks, other mercenaries. Their numbers were vast, perhaps overconfident. The Seljuks were mainly Turkic cavalry, fast, disciplined, deadly with their bows. Alp Arslan knew he could not win a straight slugging match. He needed a plan, he needed cunning, he needed the favor of Allah. The battle began. Seljuk horse archers harassed the Byzantine lines. They loosed volleys of arrows, then they retreated, feigned retreats. A classic step tactic. The Byzantines, impatient, advanced. They tried to force a decisive engagement. Romanos himself led the charge, but the Seljuks were elusive. They drew the Byzantines further and further. They stretched their lines. They sowed confusion. The sun beat down. Dust filled the air. As evening approached, Romanos ordered a retreat. It was a mistake. The signal was misunderstood. Parts of his army fell into disarray. Alp Arslan saw his chance. He ordered the main assault. The Seljuks, who had seemed to be fleeing, turned. They attacked with ferocity. They enveloped the Byzantine flanks. Treachery played a part too. Some Byzantine contingents deserted. Others failed to engage. The Byzantine center with the emperor was surrounded. The fighting was desperate. Romanos fought bravely, but his army was collapsing. By nightfall it was over. The Byzantine army was shattered. Emperor Romanos IV Diogenes was captured. A Byzantine emperor, a prisoner of the Seljuk Sultan. It was unthinkable. It was a catastrophe for Byzantium. It was a monumental victory for Alp Arslan and the Seljuks. The gates of Anatolia were flung wide open. The earth had truly shaken. The world had changed. Section 7. Malik Shah, Zenith of Power, Seeds of Decline. Alp Arslan did not live long to enjoy his triumph. He was assassinated a year after Manzikert. His son Malik Shah I inherited the Sultanate. He was young but capable, and he had Nizam al-Mulk. The brilliant vizier continued to serve. Under Malik Shah, the Seljuk Empire reached its peak, its golden age. It stretched from Central Asia to the Mediterranean, from Persia to the borders of Egypt. It was a vast, powerful realm. Malik Shah was a patron of arts and sciences. He sponsored poets like Omar Khayyam. He built mosques, madrasas, observatories. Isfahan, his capital, became a glittering center of culture. Trade flourished. Scholars thrived. The empire was relatively stable. Justice under Nizam al-Mulk's administration was maintained. For a time it seemed the Seljuks had mastered the art of empire. They had come so far from the steppes. But even at its height, cracks began to appear. The empire was too large, too diverse. Turkic emirs, provincial governors grew powerful. They became restless. They sought more autonomy. The old nomadic spirit of independence clashed with centralized rule. Succession disputes were common. When a sultan died, his sons and relatives often fought for the throne. These internal struggles weakened the state. Blood feuds tore at its heart. Nizam al-Mulk, the architect of Seljuk administration, was assassinated in 1092, shortly after Malik Shah himself died. His death plunged the empire into civil war. His sons fought each other. The centralized power he and his father had built began to unravel. The Golden Age was brief. The seeds of decline, sown by internal rivalries and the vastness of their conquests, began to sprout. The great empire started to fracture. The mighty Seljuks faced new challenges. Section 8. A changed world: Seljuk legacy in Persia and Anatolia. The Seljuk conquest had a profound impact on Persia. They adopted Persian culture. Persian language became the language of administration and literature. Persian officials like Nizam al-Mulk played key roles in governing the empire. This created a Turco-Persian tradition, a fusion of Turkic military prowess and Persian refined civilization. This synthesis would shape the region for centuries to come. It was a new cultural landscape. In Anatolia, the victory at Manzikert was transformative. It was not an immediate conquest, but it opened the floodgates. Turkic tribes poured into the Anatolian plateau. They settled the land. They changed its demographic character. Gradually, Anatolia became Turkified and Islamized. The Byzantine Empire, though it survived, was crippled. It lost its heartland. New Turkic principalities, beyliks, emerged in Anatolia. The Seljuks of Rum, a branch of the main Seljuk line, established a powerful state there. The Seljuks were also champions of Sunni Islam. They suppressed Shia influence, particularly the Fatimids in Egypt. They promoted Sunni orthodoxy through madrasas. These religious schools standardized Islamic education. They produced scholars, judges, and administrators. This strengthened Sunni Islam across their empire. Their patronage of learning also led to advancements in science, mathematics, and astronomy. They left a rich intellectual heritage. However, their rule was not without its challenges. The cultural clash between the nomadic Turkic warriors and the settled Persian and Arab populations persisted. The Ghazi warriors, vital for conquest, were often difficult to control in peacetime. They raided settled areas. They resisted central authority. This internal tension was a constant source of instability. The Seljuks built an empire, but governing it was a different, more complex battle. Their legacy was one of both creation and conflict. Section 9. Echoes in Time, paving the way for the Ottomans. The great Seljuk Empire eventually fragmented. Civil wars, ambitious regional governors, and external threats took their toll. The Mongol invasions in the 13th century delivered a devastating blow. The main Seljuk line faded, but their impact endured. The Seljuks of Rum, in Anatolia, continued for a time. They carried the Seljuk legacy westward. They fought the Crusaders. They fostered a unique culture in Anatolia. The most significant long-term consequence of Seljuk rule was the Turkification of Anatolia. This created the demographic and political conditions for the rise of another Turkic power, the Ottoman Empire. The Ottomans emerged from one of the Turkic beyliks in northwestern Anatolia. These beyliks were the successor states to the Seljuk Sultanate of Rum. The Ottomans saw themselves as inheritors of the Ghazi tradition, the Seljuk tradition. The Seljuks provided a template for empire building. Their military organization, their administrative systems, their patronage of Sunni Islam, all influenced the Ottomans. The Ottomans learned from Seljuk successes. They also learned from Seljuk failures. They built a more centralized, more durable state. But the foundations were laid by those who came before. The Seljuks had shown that Turkic nomads could conquer ancient civilizations. They could build mighty empires. So the story of the Seljuks is not just a tale of a forgotten empire. It is a crucial chapter in the history of the Middle East. And in the history of Europe, their rise changed the balance of power. Their conquests reshaped cultures and borders. They were a bridge between Central Asia and the Mediterranean. They were warriors who became rulers, nomads who embraced civilization. Their echoes resonated through the centuries, culminating in the rise of the Ottomans, an empire that would dominate the region for 600 years. The Seljuk fire had burned brightly, and its embers sparked an even greater flame.